Tennessee This Week from WATE's 6 on Your Side starts now.
Hello and welcome to Tennessee This Week. Good to be with you. I'm Don Hudson. On Wednesday, arguments were heard by the Supreme Court on whether a Tennessee ban on medical transgender treatments like puberty blockers and surgery for children violates the Constitution. The case was brought by a family in Nashville whose 16-year-old daughter is transgender. They claim Tennessee's law is unconstitutional. Now, last year, Tennessee lawmakers banned the treatments that the teen was receiving, in part citing uncertain long-term harm on children. And Wednesday, Chief Justice John Roberts questioned whether the High Court was best situated to address evolving medical issues or if they should be decided really by states. A ruling could be made in the coming months. And joining us today, our WATE, of course, political pundits, our panel, Courtney Piper, Craig Griffith, and Michael Covington. And so we'll start with that topic. And anyone who wants to jump in, first off, why did Tennessee, because there are 20-plus states that have similar laws, how did Tennessee get to be the ones that argue or get to be the state that got to argue this? Is anyone even aware of that?
Well, they have a plaintiff that decided
before
to sue.
We got there first.
Things were, but it's some of the other suits are in the pipeline. So, and it's clear from veteran Supreme Court watchers that I read and heard speaking that the court seems to be leaning toward upholding the Tennessee bill. They're going to uphold the procedural part of the bill, that the state has the right to regulate medical practice in the state. They aren't going to take up the issue of whether it's the right thing to do. So it's just going to be, deciding on the procedural issues. And, it brings a couple of things to mind. They're citing some European studies that say that there's harm to children or maybe harm to children. And if you look at all the European studies, I've only looked at two, I'll have to admit. Most of them say that the best thing to do is to have a doctor and the family and mental health professionals decide what's the best course of action. There's nowhere does it mention that a state legislature should be involved in that decision.
Right.
These drugs are used in other medical protocols, so it's they're singling out the transgender issue because, and another thing is all through the voucher discussions, it's all about parental choice. It's all about let the parents decide what's the best thing for their child, where to go to school. But when it comes to a cultural issue like this, transgender treatment, no, the parents don't have the final say. The state wants to have the final say.
And I don't know, and I'm not arguing for it, but can the parents say, no, it's okay that my 11-year-old get a tattoo? I mean, there are certain.
Sure.
Do we not? Do we not?
There's you can't smoke.
But when the parent says, I want my kid to smoke, they still don't allow that.
No, they don't allow smoking, but you can't go get a tattoo. If you're a parent.
And you can't walk into the liquor store with your kids and say, well, I'm his parent, it's okay. Right. So, I mean, clearly that, and I'm not taking a side, but that can't be the only argument right there, Courtney.
Again, the issue here is who, and this is not necessarily the legal argument in front of the Supreme Court, but if we're political pundits here.
That's right. This is just an opinion.
The issue here is who is best suited to make a medical decision. I would contend that Supreme Court justices and the state legislature is not in the best position to make individualized decisions about what is best for a family and what is best for a child. That needs to be done in consultation with the doctor, the parents, the family, mental health professionals, etc. There is this, and guess what? If you don't like a decision that a family makes, if you find it abhorrent, if it's something that you wouldn't make, that is fine, but it doesn't mean it needs to be illegal. And also, while we're talking about the side effects of this medication, there are side effects for literally every single piece of medication that is available to anybody on the market. That argument, to me, is really hiding and masking the true issue here, which is trying to discriminate against transgender people in general, making it so that they do not exist and do not have a place in society. And that is not something that we should be doing as Americans.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's, I don't know who's for it or against it, and I wonder if that's what they think, or they're just thinking more, hey, these are kids and these are life-altering decisions. Maybe we should step back here a little bit, but again, that's just things that we hear.
And I don't think that you should be making that decision for my family, and I shouldn't be making that decision for your family. You should do what's best for you. And a Supreme Court justice and the state legislature should not be in on those decisions.
Michael.
A complicated issue.
Yeah, well, for sure.
I'm imagining myself at 14 and my contemporaries when we were 14. None of us were of a mindset to be able to make a decision that would change our lives forever. But you go beyond that, who does really have the decision-making right of way on this? And I think Craig is right. I think that you've got situations where it's not legal to do one thing, but it's legal to do another thing. It's not legal to get a tattoo. It's not legal, or it is legal to take your child out of a school regarding the vouchers and move them to another school. This is, but I differ with Craig on the cultural side of it. I don't think this is much about culture as it is about mental health and medical health. And so when those decisions are made, certainly the parents need to be involved, and the final decision maker has to be the parent. But mental health folks, healthcare, medical professionals need to be involved in that decision, because I don't think parents are always ready to know what's best for their child 7 years from now. And that's my concern.
Yeah. And the thing is, the Supreme Court's obviously going to look at U.S. laws and those arguments that were presented. We would not be the only country. I've just looked up some research on this. Denmark has restricted youth gender transitions sharply, almost always. Australia, gender-affirming treatment can only be given to those under 18 in the absence of a dispute between the relevant parties. We have, whatever it was, 20-something states that feel the same way as Tennessee. England began restricting gender-affirming hormones for children. This is because they have concerns of long-term harms, and they want more, they want more studies to be done on it. So it clearly is there's a lot of gray area with this going on.
I'm concerned that we're moving too fast, but I'm not sure who's driving the speed of this process. Is it the parent and their children that are in a hurry to get a resolution? Is it the state legislature in 18, 19 states or 20 states? I think we're moving too fast, and I think a part of that is technology is moving faster than society can adapt to. And so we've got to be better stewards of the life and health of our children, and this is a key moment.
Yeah, well, everything moves fast. I mean, those kids at that age, if they wanted to ask someone to do a dance, they either had to get on a phone, try to hide from mom and dad or from a younger brother that would be pestering you. And now they just text and, they ask someone out. So
well, and one of the things that the Tennessee Attorney General cited was that the availability of this treatment has spurned the use of it.
Right.
That that there's and they cited a case study in England where the use of these treatments grew by 4,000% once it became available through the national health. So that's it. Everything that I've read all says da 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 da, but it all needs more study.
Right.
So I think that's the key, is that we need more study as to what is. And meanwhile, the parents are left coping with the issues that this represents for their families.
Right.
And the availability of the med is spurring the speed of it.
Well, it's
as to all availability of medication, when it's available, people tend to use it.
We're talking children.
Well, that medicine
Children too.
That medicine is used in other medical protocols now.
Right.
So it's not like it's stopped completely. It's just stopped in this one particular transgender issue.
And the fact that we are targeting transgender youth and not other medical instances that it's used for tells me that the speed is dictated by politicians that want to fuel the flames of cultural wars, and they really don't have the best interest of families and children.
Okay. And I can't speak for them. I don't know. I do want to mention there was a research study, 2,772 adolescents in early childhood. They asked them, and 11% reported gender non-contentness at age 11. They followed them and talked to them every few years and things like that, and they said that fell greatly. And another study that did similar from 10 to 26 years, 78% had gender discontentment, 19%, but it went away naturally for 19%. Only 2% had increasing gender discontentment later on in life. So you could see where people look at these studies and go, well, there's this and this, and then you pull another study and go, yeah, but this study, the whole studies need to be studied.
And Don, what that tells me is that these decisions are best left to the people closest involved in the decision making, not a politician, not a Supreme Court justice. Parents and their medical providers and the child are the best people to make these decisions, not people so far removed we don't even know their names or faces.
It'd be nice to get a pediatrician involved in. I've not heard the word or the title pediatrician once. And the one medical professional that spends time with children is a pediatrician. And I'm not hearing them weigh in on this.
Well, the one study that I read was a synopsis of all this from the European Academy of Pediatrics. And again, they said that, you know, it's the best decision is made by the family and the medical professionals, but there needs to be more study.
Right. And what about the people? I guess just the last thing on this issue is there are those people that had the surgery. Now they're coming back saying, hey, this was way too fast, way too available. And maybe it's a small percent, but they don't even seem to be getting any type of voice at all in this. But at the same time,
again, that's why the decision should be made with the family and the medical professionals. You can't. I mean, nothing's ever perfect.
My point is, they did that.
Right, and
now
nothing's
they're
ever
saying, "Boy, we
perfect.
shouldn't have done that."
Nothing's ever 100%.
Well, and of course, the surgery it had in under 18. There were very few instances of that in Tennessee. Yeah. So that's the final step that people talk about, and usually you have to be an adult to make that decision.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see where this all plays out. We'll be talking about it again when they do make a decision. Thank you. Still to come on Tennessee this week, a state senator gets charged with driving under the influence and being involved in a hit and run. We'll talk about the possible implications this has at the state capitol coming up next. Welcome back to Tennessee this week. A prominent Tennessee Senate Republican has been arrested, accused of driving under the influence, also being involved in a hit and run. This happened while he was apparently on vacation in the Jekyll Island area of Georgia, which is just south of Savannah. Well, speaking with Ken Yeager, troopers say they smelled alcohol on his breath, and Yeager admitted to being involved in a crash earlier. After he was taken into custody, he was charged with driving under the influence, being involved in a hit and run, and failure to stop at a stop sign. Yeager has since posted bond. The 77-year-old who represents Kingston was reelected as Senate Republican Caucus chairman last month. In a statement, Yeager told us that he is and will continue to fully cooperate with authorities. The question for the panel here is, does this have some political blowback? Is he going to lose any position? Does he lose any credibility, any power? Or does it?
Well, I sort of long for the old days when someone was in a situation such as this, they would resign their seat and say that they're going to go home and take care of their family and issues and try to get right with the world again. But that's not the world we live in now. And I wouldn't be surprised if, Ken continues in office. I believe there's, once they're indicted, the Senate Ethics Committee can take some action related to the case. And that's probably, a few months away at least. So, but in terms of the overall political impact on the Capitol, there's a Republican supermajority, and they will continue to function that way, with or without Ken Yeager. Then, if he steps down, there'd be a special election to see if a Republican could hold on to that seat. But I don't think in terms of the Republican agenda in the Tennessee state capitol that this has that much of an impact.
So in the old days, people resigned, huh? I'm trying to remember some of those stories. I can remember the ones
not
where
in
they
recent
didn't.
history.
I was going to say, I remember the ones where they didn't. So
remember monkey business?
Well, maybe.
And of course, it doesn't apply apparently to Secretary of Defense issues as well.
Yeah. So anyway, back. Well, let's stick to Yeager since I don't want to get too far out. I'm just. What do you think he will do? You think he'll just move on as it, say he's sorry and move on?
It appears from what Senator McNally has said that there is a process in the Senate for this, since he does have a leadership position as chairman of the caucus. And that is, he needs to request a committee hearing to determine, and it is, as Craig said, after he formally gets indicted, to see if he's still fit to serve or something like that. And if he does not request that, then there is action that is taken if he fails to request some sort of hearing. So we'll have to see how that whole process plays out. It appears from these reports that nobody was injured in this hit and run, and I think we should all be thankful for that his actions and lack of judgment did not cause serious harm or injury to another person. And, I sincerely hope that he takes the time that he needs to reflect on what's happened and take care of himself.
Yeah. The optics for this, Michael, is, as far as, like I said, he could step down, or he could, obviously apologize, move forward. Like, what's it going to be if he does just kind of plows through this like, hey, yeah, I was sorry, and just moves on, or does he have to do more?
As Craig and Courtney were speaking, I was looking at the monitor and I was watching video of Senator Yeager. He's not going to quit. He's not going to step down. He's not going to walk away. He's going to ride this out. He probably feels as though on some level there's a self-righteous position that he could take that justifies the fact that he made a mistake and he's going to own that mistake and he should be able to move on with his life. Craig is right. I remember when the standard operating procedure was to resign, go home, take care of your family. That's in the last couple of years I've heard that. That is not what we hear now. The thirst for power is so great now that there would be those who would not want him to leave because they don't want him to leave behind the power that he has.
And that was what I was getting to next. His constituents, I mean, where would they be on this? And yeah, he's clearly...
Well, the election isn't for another 4 years.
Right, he was just
he just got elected. So.
With political memories so very short, you know,
and he'll be
years,
81 at that time,
81,
too.
He
so.
may decide just not to run.
So.
And he didn't just start drinking.
No.
His constituents know that he likes to take a nip from time to time. So this doesn't really surprise his constituents. If he were on a ballot next year, he'd win.
That soon, like with this
Yeah,
going
because on some level, he's been vilified from one side of the state to the other. So what people are doing in his district, the people that care for him, the people that nurture him and continue to elect him, they will embrace him, they will forgive him, they will allow him to move on and continue his career until he decides he wants to end it.
Do you agree with that, Courtney? And your thoughts about that? If that's just move on.
Again, there was a time where if somebody was charged with a DUI, they would say, I'm going to take the time that I need to take care of myself and not worry about ancillary things that would not allow them to take care of themselves. Being an elected official, being one of those ancillary things. Senator Yeager holds a position of a lot of power and authority representing East Tennessee in Nashville. And I think we are in a time in politics where you want to try to hold on to that as much as humanly possible. And if there's a way to not let it go, you're not going to let it go. And I think where we are right now in our society is there's no pressure to just let that go and say, I'm going to go home and take care of myself.
What's that say about, I guess, us or voters or constituents?
We're desperate for those who we support having power and keeping power. I want our county mayor to continue to be able to govern and lead us. Same thing for Tim Burchett, same thing for Becky Massey. We want our leaders to remain in office to continue to do what we elected them to do, even if they have transgressions.
Just like that, huh?
Well, yeah. Well, and you also have to wonder, there's going to be bills related to drinking while driving, and things like that in the legislature. How does he vote on stuff like that? You know, what is his rationale for voting for or against a bill when you've been through a process like this? So
recusal and an early lunch?
If he's there, he's not going to recuse himself.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on, and still to come here on Tennessee This Week, the Tennessee Ethics Commission says Governor Lee violated ethics rules. We're going to take a look into that issue next.
I was asked to speak at a conference, and that 501c3 organization offered to reimburse hotel and travel expenses, which is customary and allowable under the law.
Welcome back to Tennessee This Week. The Tennessee Ethics Commission now saying that Governor Lee's all expenses paid trip to an island in Florida over the summer was an illegal gift under state ethics rules, and this week the Ethics Commission advising the governor to pay it back. Now, the governor traveled to Marco Island over the summer for an annual conference hosted by Alliance Defending Freedom, or ADF, a Christian legal advocacy group. But things get a little ethically murky, because of the 501(c)(3)'s connections to lobbyists here in Tennessee through a separate organization, ADF Action. Now, state ethics laws ban elected officials from receiving gifts from groups that employ lobbyists. However, Governor Lee adamant that he did not break the law. A spokesperson for the governor's office says the money has already been repaid. So I'm not going to continue fighting about it, saying that I was right, but they did reimburse. What was he right, or is the Ethics Commission right?
The Ethics Commission is right, and the takeaway here is the system works, but you needed to have the push, the complaint lodged with the Ethics Committee. I would expect the governor's people who are around him to be able to flag these things a little bit sooner for him, to let him know, hey, I don't think that's money that you should be taking. But in this instance, the system worked. It required somebody to take it to the Ethics Commission for them to issue a decision.
How big a deal is this, Michael?
This is not a big deal, but it happens, and it was wrong. As Courtney was saying, I don't think it was illegal, but it was wrong. Spending a lot of time with the whole ethics issue and commissions and committees, knowledge and intent always has to be at in the forefront of your mind. Did you have knowledge that what you were doing was wrong and you did it anyway? Did you intend to do wrong? If you had knowledge, but your knowledge was incomplete, that is a violation of a rule, but it's not criminal, it's incidental. And it's the kind of thing you handle by saying, I will pay the fine, I was wrong.
All right. Well, he's clearly maintaining that he wasn't wrong, but they've paid it back, so I guess they're...
Well, yes, he's maintaining that, for future,
right.
trips and things like that. But, I've always told politicians, if you're traveling for state business, it can be reimbursed. But if you're traveling for other business, to things that aren't required in your job,
right,
then you need to pay for it. It's not, I mean, if it's too expensive, then perhaps you shouldn't go. I always, when I went away to any conferences that were paid for by the city and there was extra time, I would always maintain the receipts that I paid for any activity
right,
that wasn't under the city's purvey, that did not relate to the city purpose that I was there for. So in case anyone came up, and said, I saw you on the golf course or something, I would have the receipt to where, I paid for that myself.
Right.
And it's not difficult to know that. If it doesn't pass the smell test, then it usually stinks. And don't do something that you're going to get in trouble for on the back end like this. It's not a big deal. I mean, the governor's going to survive this. I don't have any idea how much the money was, but it's not going to impact his legislation or his time as governor. It's just a little black eye.
The thing that stands out to what you said is you were golfing. I'm curious when they said, hey, I saw you golfing, and then what did they say after? You look good, or you should get off the golf course?
Well, I'm no Tiger Woods, so it was, you need to play more golf and practice more.
But at least you paid for it. I guess that's the key. Is that a tough spot for some of the politicians to know every little thing behind it, or is it just say, hey, we want to pay for this? Should their first thing be no?
Someone should, as Courtney said, someone should make sure their bases are covered. That's simple. That's someone's job responsibility.
Because this is not just like a one time. I mean, the governor, I'm sure several times gets offers to go to places and to do things.
Right. The sticky thing here is that this organization has a C4 affiliated with it that lobbies the state. And so that's what should send off the alarm bells and triggers of, wait a minute, this organization lobbies the state of Tennessee. Maybe we should not take that money. Maybe we should pay for it
What about
ourselves.
Lobbyists overall? I mean, should there be more restrictions on that, less of them?
The first thing they need to do is remove those church pews outside of the legislators' offices, because that's where the lobbyists hang out. And so a legislator will tell you, okay, where would you like to have lunch today if you're visiting? You walk out and they point to someone and say, let's go talk, let's go eat, let's go do business.
I mean, the legislation is, I don't want to say the majority, but I'll say quite a bit of the legislation that's passed is written by lobbyists or by out-of-state advocacy groups. So, lobbyists have an active role in our government in both Nashville and in Washington. So there's a lot of expertise that legislators depend on from lobbyist organizations when they're looking at issues before them. So, would I like to say that there's, lobbyists have no impact? That's not true.
Yeah. They do have it. I mean, obviously, there are lobbyists that are trying to get money for certain things that we would all say, well, that's a good cause. You know, we need to feed the people, or we needed that. But
well, just last week there was, some information from the Tennessean about the Tennessee wants to get another $476 million for road repair, and for the locals.
Because I'm being told that we're going to have to say goodbye. Hey, thank you for watching Tennessee this week, and we'll see you next week, and maybe pick that up.
Locals to pay for, get them to lobby their state and elected officials.
The views of guests on Tennessee This Week are their own and do not represent the views of WATE.